8 months of grinding. The account is up 11%, not life-changing, but consistent. The rules are working. The journal shows progress. Everything points in the right direction. And yet, something feels stuck, like standing at the edge of a breakthrough that never quite arrives. The gap between current reality and the imagined finish line shrinks just enough to stay visible, but never enough to cross. If that feeling has been sitting in your chest for weeks or months, hit the like button right now. Not for the algorithm, because it tells me you understand what it's like to be close enough to taste it, but far enough to doubt everything. This is one of the most dangerous phases in trading. Not the early chaos when losses pile up and nothing makes sense. Not the later stage when consistency becomes automatic. This middle ground. The almost there phase, where progress is real but slow, where improvement is measurable but not transformative, where every week feels like it should be the week things click, and every week ends with the same quiet frustration that nothing fundamental has changed. Almost there keeps you exactly where you are. The trap isn't the lack of progress. The trap is the presence of just enough progress to justify staying on the same path. Just enough wins to believe the breakthrough is one more trade away. Just enough improvement to convince yourself that patience is all that's required. The mind starts bargaining. One more month, one more funded account attempt, one more strategy tweak. The finish line stays in view, always visible, always close, never reached. This isn't failure. This is something more subtle and more exhausting. It's the psychological loop of proximity without arrival, the emotional wear of hope deferred. Most traders don't quit because they're losing. They quit because they're tired of almost winning. They quit because being close hurts more than being far away ever did. This phase exists for every trader who survives long enough to reach it. The ones who blow up fast never experience it. The ones who quit early never get close enough to feel it. This is the territory of traders who have done the work, followed the rules, studied the charts, managed their risk, and still find themselves stuck in a place that feels like purgatory. Not hell, not heaven, just endless waiting. The dangerous part is how rational it all feels. The account is growing, the win rate is acceptable, the drawdowns are manageable. On paper, everything looks fine. In the mind, everything feels wrong. There's a dissonance between what the numbers say and what the body knows. The numbers say keep going. The body says something needs to change. Most traders trust the numbers and ignore the body. That's the mistake. I spent 14 months in this phase, not losing, not winning big, just existing in a narrow range of performance that felt like treading water in the middle of the ocean. I kept telling myself the same thing everyone tells themselves during this phase. Stay disciplined, trust the process, be patient, all true advice, all completely unhelpful when the internal experience is one of slow suffocation. During that period, I didn't understand what was happening. I thought I was waiting for my skills to catch up to my ambitions. I thought the market was testing my resolve. I thought consistency was just around the corner if I could endure a little longer. None of that was true. I wasn't waiting for the market to reward me. I was waiting for myself to admit that staying the same wasn't going to produce different results. The shift didn't come from more discipline or more patience. It came from recognizing that almost there was a destination, not a stopover. A place traders live for months or years, convincing themselves they're in transition when they're actually in a holding pattern. The moment I stopped treating it as temporary, something loosened. The pressure to arrive somewhere else faded. The focus shifted from chasing the breakthrough to understanding why the breakthrough kept not happening. Let me give you a quick example. There was a trader I knew named Daniel who had been trading Forex for about 9 months. He was up 7.3% on his funded account. Nothing spectacular, but stable. He followed his plan religiously, took his stops, managed his risk, did everything right on paper. Every conversation we had, he would say the same thing. Almost there. Just need a few more good trades. Just need the market to cooperate a little more. Just need to stay patient. 3 months later, he was still at 7.3%. Same account balance, same disciplined approach, same quiet frustration. The problem wasn't his strategy. The problem was his belief that the strategy would eventually deliver something it was never designed to deliver. He was trading for consistency, but his internal expectation was transformation. He wanted the breakthrough, but he was executing a plan built for slow growth. The gap between what he was doing and what he was hoping for kept him locked in place. The account never grew because his psychology never shifted. He kept waiting for the market to validate him instead of validating himself through deliberate change. Almost There became his identity, not a phase, a state of being. If this is starting to click, do me a favor, subscribe. This channel isn't about hype trades or flex culture. It's about understanding yourself so you can survive long enough to get good. The proximity trap works because it hijacks the brain's reward system in a way that's hard to detect. When the finish line is far away, the mind doesn't expect reward. When the finish line is reached, the mind receives reward. When the finish line is visible but not reachable, the mind stays in a state of heightened anticipation without resolution. That anticipation feels productive. It feels like focus. It feels like you're on the verge of something. In reality, it's just stress wearing the mask of hope. Traders in this phase often increase their activity without realizing it. Not drastically, not obviously, just subtle shifts, taking setups that are 80% aligned instead of 95%. Holding trades a little longer to squeeze out extra profit, risking slightly more to accelerate growth. All small deviations, all justified by the belief that the breakthrough is close and a little extra effort will push it over the edge. The effort doesn't push anything. It just creates more opportunities for mistakes while maintaining the illusion of progress. Almost There keeps you exactly where you are because it justifies staying on a path that isn't working while feeling like you're doing everything right. The psychological mechanism at play is something I started calling the horizon effect. Not a formal term, just a pattern I noticed in myself and others. The horizon always looks reachable. It always appears to be just a little further. Walk toward it for an hour, and it's still the same distance away. Walk for a day, same result. The distance doesn't change because the destination is an illusion created by perspective. Traders do this with profitability. They imagine a threshold where everything gets easier, where discipline becomes automatic, where the internal struggle fades. They walk toward that threshold for months, believing they're getting closer, when the threshold doesn't exist the way they think it does. Profitability isn't a place you arrive. It's a state you inhabit when your internal structure matches the demands of the market. The structure doesn't build itself through time. It builds itself through friction, failure, and deliberate recalibration. The trader who waits patiently for the structure to form is waiting for something that only forms through disruption. Almost There feels safe because it avoids disruption. It preserves the illusion that you're on the right path and just need more time. Real moment from my community. A woman named Brianna had been trading indices for 11 months. She was profitable, not massively, but enough to pass her first evaluation and get a funded account. She made about $400 in her first month, then $370 in the second, then $410 in the third. Every month, nearly identical. She wasn't losing, but she wasn't growing. She kept telling herself she was building consistency, which was true. She was also avoiding risk in a way that kept her safe but stagnant. Her stop loss was tight, her position size conservative, her profit targets modest. All smart decisions for someone learning, all limiting decisions for someone trying to scale. The psychological trap was this. She believed she was almost ready to increase her risk, almost ready to hold for larger targets, almost ready to trust herself with bigger size. The almost kept her in the same loop. She stayed conservative because she didn't feel ready. She didn't feel ready because she stayed conservative. No external event was going to break that loop, only an internal decision. She finally increased her position size by 20% after I asked her a question she couldn't answer. If you're consistently profitable at this size, what would it take for you to trust yourself at a slightly larger size? She paused, then admitted there was no logical answer. She was waiting for a feeling that would never arrive because the feeling only comes after the action, not before. Almost There was her safety zone. Leaving it required accepting discomfort without certainty. The feeling traders chase in the almost there phase is the feeling of being ready. The belief that one more week of consistency, one more clean execution, one more proof point will make the next step feel natural. It doesn't work that way. Readiness is a myth the mind creates to justify inaction. The traders who break through don't wait until they feel ready. They act before they feel ready and trust themselves to adapt in real time. Something my mentor told me during this phase that I didn't understand at the time. You're not stuck because you're not good enough. You're stuck because being stuck feels safer than being exposed. I nodded like I understood. I didn't. I kept grinding, kept following the plan, kept waiting for the moment when everything would click. 6 months later, I understood what he meant. Staying almost there protected me from the risk of trying something different and failing. It let me believe I was on the right path, even when the path had stopped moving. Almost there keeps you exactly where you are because it provides just enough validation to avoid uncomfortable questions. The shift required isn't technical. It's not about finding a better strategy or improving execution. Those things matter, but they're secondary. The shift is about confronting the gap between where you are and where you think you should be, and asking whether the gap exists because you're not ready or because you're unwilling to disrupt the pattern you've built. Most traders assume the former. Most of the time, it's the latter. Disruption doesn't mean blowing up the account or abandoning the plan. It means introducing deliberate change into a system that has become too comfortable, increasing position size slightly, extending profit targets beyond the usual range, trading a session you normally avoid, taking a setup that's valid but uncomfortable. Small changes that create friction. Friction reveals what's missing. Comfort hides it. I started noticing a pattern in the traders who stayed stuck versus the ones who broke through. The stuck traders optimized. They refined their entries, tightened their stops, perfected their journaling. All useful, but all within the boundaries of what they already knew. The traders who broke through experimented. They tested assumptions. They pushed into areas that felt slightly too risky or slightly too aggressive. They didn't recklessly gamble. They strategically explored the edges of their competence and discovered that the edges were further out than they thought. The almost there phase isn't a test of patience. It's a test of willingness to let go of the identity you've built as a careful, disciplined, risk-averse trader and step into the identity of someone who trusts their skills enough to use them fully. That transition feels dangerous because it is dangerous, not to the account, to the ego. The ego has invested months or years in the story that you're almost ready. Admitting you've been ready but unwilling is harder than admitting you're not ready yet. Comment how long you've been trading below. No judgment, just curiosity. I want to know where most people are in their journey. There was a guy in my group named Aaron who traded futures. 14 months in, consistently breaking even. He would have great weeks followed by mediocre weeks that erased the gains. Never a big loss, never a big win, just endless oscillation around zero. He kept saying he was almost there, almost consistent, almost profitable, almost ready to scale. He believed it, and his account performance reflected that belief. It stayed exactly where he expected it to stay. Almost, but not quite. One session, he took a trade that violated his rules. Not dramatically, but enough that he noticed. The trade worked, made $620. He felt guilty about it, which told me something important. He felt guilty about succeeding outside his system. That guilt was the lock keeping him in place. His identity was built around being the disciplined trader who followed the plan. Winning outside the plan threatened that identity. So his subconscious kept him inside the boundaries of the plan, even when the plan wasn't producing the results he wanted. The breakthrough didn't come from better discipline. It came from recognizing that his discipline had become a cage. He wasn't protecting himself from losses. He was protecting himself from wins that would force him to see himself differently. Almost there let him maintain the identity of the careful trader without the accountability of the profitable trader. Once he saw that, the pattern broke. Not immediately, not cleanly, slowly, with discomfort, with setbacks. Growth isn't linear. It's jagged. The traders who expect smooth progress stay stuck waiting for it. The question that cuts through the almost there trap isn't about strategy or skill. It's simpler. Am I executing the same plan expecting different results, or am I deliberately testing the boundaries of what I'm capable of? If the answer is the former, you're not almost there. You're exactly where you've been for months. If the answer is the latter, you're in the discomfort zone where actual growth happens. Almost there keeps you exactly where you are because it feels like forward motion when it's actually sunnular repetition. The traders who stay in this phase for years, and some do, aren't lazy or uncommitted. They're often the most disciplined traders in the room. They journal obsessively. They follow their rules religiously. They study constantly. All the right behaviors, all pointed in the wrong direction. They're optimizing a system that's already optimized. They're perfecting execution when execution isn't the problem. They're waiting for external validation of internal readiness when the validation only comes from internal risk. One thing that helped me: if I can't articulate what specifically needs to change for me to move forward, then I'm not almost there. I'm comfortable, comfort masquerading as patience. Stagnation masquerading as discipline. The mind is excellent at reframing avoidance as virtue. It tells you that staying cautious is wise, that moving slowly is prudent, that waiting for certainty is smart. All true in certain contexts. All traps when used to justify staying in a place that stopped serving you months ago. The shift happens when you stop asking when you'll be ready and start asking what you're avoiding by not being ready. The answer is usually exposure. Exposure to larger risk, exposure to larger wins, exposure to the possibility that you're capable of more than you've allowed yourself to attempt. That exposure feels dangerous because success at a higher level demands a higher level of emotional regulation, self-trust, and identity integration. Most traders aren't afraid of losing money. They're afraid of winning money and not being able to handle it. The almost there phase protects you from that fear by keeping you in a narrow range where success is controlled and failure is contained. Breaking through requires accepting that the next level won't feel controlled. It will feel chaotic, uncomfortable, and unfamiliar. The traders who wait for it to feel comfortable never leave the phase. The traders who step into discomfort discover that comfort was the problem all along. I started tracking not just what I traded, but what I avoided trading, the setups I talked myself out of, the size increases I postponed, the profit extensions I cut short. That data was more valuable than my win rate. It showed me the pattern of self-limitation I'd built without realizing it. I wasn't being disciplined. I was being self-protective in a way that no longer served me. The protection had become the prison. When I finally increased my position size, it felt reckless. It wasn't. It was appropriate for my skill level. The feeling of recklessness was just my nervous system responding to unfamiliar territory. I didn't wait for the feeling to pass. I acted despite the feeling and discovered that my capacity was larger than my comfort zone suggested. That discovery doesn't come from thinking or planning. It comes from doing and adjusting. The traders who break through don't have more courage. They have more willingness to feel uncomfortable without interpreting discomfort as danger. They separate the emotional signal from the tactical reality. The emotion says this is too much. The tactic says this is within range. They trust the tactic while acknowledging the emotion. That split is the skill almost there traders haven't developed yet. They conflate emotional discomfort with tactical risk and stay small to avoid the discomfort. Almost there keeps you exactly where you are because it frames patience as a virtue when sometimes patience is just fear with better PR. The identity shift required isn't from struggling trader to profitable trader. It's from cautious executor to confident risk taker, not reckless, not gambling. Confident in the sense of trusting your preparation enough to use it fully. The cautious executor survives. The confident risk taker grows. Both are necessary at different stages. The trap is staying in cautious executor mode when the foundation is already built. Trading doesn't care who you think you are. It reveals who you are. Then it asks if you're willing to become someone else. Someone who doesn't need certainty before acting. Someone who doesn't need permission to grow. Someone who doesn't wait for readiness but creates readiness through action. That transformation doesn't happen in the safe zone. It happens in the zone where you're not sure you can handle it, but you try anyway. The almost there phase ends when you stop treating it as a waiting room and start treating it as a decision point. Stay or go, optimize or disrupt, protect or expose. There's no right answer. There's only the answer that aligns with what you actually want. If you want safety and modest growth, stay where you are. If you want acceleration and uncomfortable expansion, make the change you've been postponing. Most traders never make that choice consciously. They drift, they wait, they hope. They stay almost there until they get tired and quit, or until external pressure forces change. The ones who choose deliberately, who look at the gap between where they are and where they want to be, and decide to close it through action rather than time, those are the ones who break through. Not because they're special, because they stopped waiting for permission they were never going to receive. The market doesn't reward patience. It rewards alignment between skill and execution. If your skill exceeds your execution, you're underperforming by choice. If your execution exceeds your skill, you're gambling. Almost there is usually the former. The skill exists, the willingness doesn't. The gap isn't ability, it's courage. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that shows up on a random Tuesday and decides today is the day to stop waiting. Something shifts when you stop measuring progress by how close you are to the finish line and start measuring it by how willing you are to leave your comfort zone. The finish line is arbitrary anyway, a number you picked, a milestone you imagined. The real measure is whether you're becoming the kind of trader who can handle larger size, longer hold times, deeper drawdowns, bigger wins. If you're not actively building that capacity, you're not almost there. You're standing still. The traders who stay stuck don't lack information or skill. They lack permission. They're waiting for someone or something to tell them it's okay to take the next step. That permission never comes from outside. It comes from internal authority. The decision that you've waited long enough, proven enough, prepared enough. The decision that almost there is no longer acceptable and exact arrival isn't required. Just movement, just disruption. Just the willingness to trade in a way that feels slightly too big, slightly too aggressive, slightly too exposed. That's where growth lives. In the gap between what feels safe and what's actually possible. The almost there phase keeps you on the safe side of that gap, convincing you that one more day, one more week, one more month of preparation will make the crossing easier. It won't. The crossing is always uncomfortable. The question is whether you're willing to be uncomfortable in service of growth or comfortable in service of stagnation. Most people choose comfort. They don't admit it. They frame it as patience or discipline or prudence. It's still comfort. There's no judgment in that. Comfort is a valid choice. Just own it. Don't pretend you're almost there when you're choosing to stay here. The honesty matters, not for anyone else, for you. Because the moment you're honest about what you're actually choosing, the choice becomes clear. Stay or go. Optimize or disrupt. Protect or expose. The ones who go aren't smarter or more talented. They're just tired of waiting for a feeling that never arrives. They step forward without readiness and discover that readiness was waiting on the other side of action, not before it. That discovery changes everything. Not the account balance, not the win rate. The relationship between self-trust and execution. Once that relationship shifts, the almost there phase ends. Not because you arrived somewhere, because you stopped waiting to leave. There's no shortcut through this. There's only the decision to stay or leave. Most people leave. The ones who stay aren't special. They're just stubborn enough to see it through. Stubborn enough to stop waiting for permission. Stubborn enough to trust that the discomfort of growth is preferable to the comfort of stagnation. The market will keep testing that stubbornness every week, every month, every year. The test never stops. The question is whether you stop before the test does. Before you go, what's one thing you've been postponing in your trading because you don't feel ready yet? Drop it in the comments. That one thing is probably the exact thing keeping you almost there instead of actually there.